Greetings people, if you have been struggling with procrastination in vain, you have come to the right place. I am Dr. Rebecca Stafford, you can call me Dr. Habit because we're all friends here, and I am about to teach you how to get the mind focusing effects of Ritalin without taking the drug, also known as the top psychology strategy for beating procrastination. Now, this isn't my first rodeo. I have presented this presentation a number of times, and before we get stuck in, I just want to read you some feedback I got from a audience member. So in fact, the lovely Robin sent me this email after one of these presentations. She said, "Hi Rebecca, I really loved your talk and I was totally inspired. My procrastination level had been over the top for quite a while. I was getting through each day just spending half my time thinking about what I should be doing next. I used your psychological technique religiously for a week and was totally stunned with how much I achieved. I was having problems filling up the day with tasks as I had never structured myself so well before." So what Robin is saying, she was working so effectively using the technique I'm about to teach you that she actually ran out of work. Imagine. I was achieving lots and getting things done so well it felt like magic. Then I had a month where the wheels fell off and I was away from home, stuff happened, and I noticed by not using the psychological technique I was falling back into old habits again. So I'm back onto it and I can't thank you enough for the wisdom you've shared. It works really well for me and has quite realistically changed my life. Enough of my banter, my 10-minute break is coming up. Regards, Robin. So I've read you this because this technique is so powerful, but it's really deceptively simple. So I just really want to encourage you to use it. Now, I'm going to start by actually talking about underperformance. So underperformance is when we are not achieving anywhere near what we're capable of. And underperformance is common and it's stressful and it's demoralizing. And underperformance can relate to almost anything. So academic underperformance is really common. Maybe there's some other people here with could try harder on your school report cards. It can also mean not writing that book, or not finishing that art project, or not going into politics, or not speaking in public, or not making videos. But very importantly, underperformance means not getting your work and your voice out into the world where it's desperately needed. And of course, because procrastination is a major cause of underperformance, that's what we're going to focus on now. So first, a little bit about me. So this is me. I graduated from Auckland University in New Zealand with, this is me with my PhD. University awarded me $6,000 for submitting a timely quality PhD thesis, and I've authored and co-authored about a dozen academic publications and journal articles. So you may be wondering, so basically I've done pretty well academically, so you may be wondering, what do I know about procrastination? And actually I know a lot. So I'm talking about procrastination and underperformance because I know the deep pain that these things can have. So I actually carried my poor study habits from college, as we call it here in New Zealand, to university, where I underperformed, and I dropped out of uni a year and a half later with a handful of C's and a couple of did not completes, and one A in psychology. But at the age of 19, I left university with something far, far worse than my crappy grades, and that was that I felt like a failure. And that is the loneliest feeling in the world. So when I returned to university as a older adult, I suspected that I wasn't completely stupid, but I needed better work habits and I needed to address my procrastination, and it helps majoring in psychology when you need to do this. So unfortunately I had a very diverse undergraduate degree as well, and along with some other things. So I did figure out how to do it, and I developed a kind of psychology procrastination busting toolkit, and I helped myself. It was not easy. I don't mean to imply that it was easy, but the psychology tools I developed made it possible for me to get some great academic results. And I've been using these same tools to help students and regular people ever since as well. So, it's good to define your terms. So, what is procrastination anyway? So procrastination is when you have the intention of doing something but you don't. You delay, you put it off, you don't get around to it. And for this presentation I'm mostly going to use the sadly common example of academic procrastination, where we delay studying for assignments, tests and exams with panic-stricken study just before the deadline. But we can also procrastinate on a range of activities, from the tedious and fiddly and boring like doing our tax, through to procrastinating on work that's actually really important to us. And often the more important our work or our goal is, the scarier it is and the more we are likely to procrastinate. So what is it that we are so scared of? Well, lots of things, such as criticism, not getting high enough grades, failure, being laughed at, ridicule, not being good enough, overwhelm, or is it something else? And there is actually something else that underpins all of these fears, and that is the fear that we are not good enough for love and belonging. And this is a very primal fear, and procrastination is actually caused by fear of failure, not laziness, contrary to popular myth. In fact, laziness doesn't even exist as a psychological construct, but I'll get on my soapbox about that on another video. So for procrastinators, failure is associated with social rejection. And back in cave people days, social rejection was fatal. If your tribe guessed your guilty secret that you were a worthless failure, they'd soon chuck you out of the cave and you'd soon die of a nasty trifecta of starvation, loneliness and saber-toothed tiger. So consequently and understandably, procrastinators feel they must avoid failure at all costs. So if you're terrified of failing exams, or terrified of criticism or ridicule or being rejected, that means that means your brain can't tell the difference between exams and saber-toothed tigers. I told you it was primal. So therefore, the prospect of exams will kick your brain into one of three survival modes: fight, flight or freeze. So if you procrastinate, that means your brain has chosen flight. The exam represents possible deadly failure, and your brain is trying to run away from the threat, which is sensible if you can outrun it. So I'm just going to take a little digression here. So please raise your hand and leave it up. And leave it up if you never procrastinate. Okay, so I want to make the point that procrastination is really, really, really common. So I've probably given this presentation live to about 500 people, and I always ask this question: please raise your hand and leave it up if you never procrastinate. And so far I've had 2 people leave their hands up. And I know this isn't very scientific, and they could have been pathological liars, or maybe there was a whole lot of really shy, non-procrastinating people in the audience who didn't want to raise their hands. But the point is that it is really, 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 really common. You are not alone. You're in very, very big company. But the thing is, even though most of us procrastinate at least some of the time, and some of us procrastinate a lot of the time, there is one time where pretty much all of us stop procrastinating. When do you think that is? Let's take a look. So we mostly, not always, usually, stop procrastinating as the deadline approaches. This is because flight or procrastination, avoiding the work, is no longer an option when the exam, or saber-toothed tiger, is no longer 3 weeks away. It is now blocking the entrance to our cave. And when fight is no longer an option, our brain switches survival mode from flight mode to fight mode. And fight mode floods our bodies and brains with adrenaline, which allows us to intensely engage with the threat immediately in front of us and finally stop procrastinating. So there is a problem with this though. We usually stop procrastinating too late to get the kind of results that we're capable of. And again, sometimes we procrastinate and still get good results, but again, it's typically a very stressful way of living with some serious consequences for our mental and physical health. But there's a silver lining to all this. We can still use this information to help us beat procrastination, the information that in looming deadlines will help us stop procrastinating. So what we need, rather than one huge, scary but far away saber-toothed tiger or one huge deadline, we can use lots of saber-toothed kittens or lots of mini deadlines. Now, saber-toothed kittens can give you a nasty bite, but they can't kill you. And because there are lots of them, we can sprinkle them around and we can use them to give us the procrastination busting bursts of adrenaline sooner, so we don't leave studying or the work until the last minute and we can start working effectively sooner. But you may have noticed a flaw in my plans, which is that saber-toothed kittens are actually quite hard to come by these days. But that's okay, because we can use something else which is just as good and a lot more accessible. We can use saber-tooth timers. Now, I just got to say, this technique, I call it the time to task, or T3. It is simplicity itself. Again, please do not be deceived by the simplicity. It is underpinned by powerful neuroscience. I actually normally use a range of psychology tools when I'm helping people overcome serious procrastination, but if I could only pick one, this is it. This is the number one tool that got me from university dropout to PhD. I also want to say, it's you may have heard of the Pomodoro technique, and it's very similar, and it's certainly underpinned by the same neuroscience. However, there are some differences, and there's also some things that you must do for it to not stop working, if that makes sense. So I'll go over those. So I'll quickly run through it. So again, it couldn't be simpler. So set your time, e.g. 40 minutes. It doesn't matter too much. I'll talk about time a bit more in a minute. Work while your timer's going, and when the timer goes off, stop working. This is critical for the continued success of this technique, because your brain is not stupid, and if you keep working, and it's very tempting, when the timer goes off, your brain will quickly figure out that your timer is not actually a saber-toothed kitten, and it will stop producing the mind-focusing adrenaline, which is allowing you to do focused work. And I've got to really emphasize this, because this technique is so powerful that it can help you beat procrastination, and you're finally in the flow. And when your timer goes off, it is so tempting to keep working, because it's such a relief to finally be in the flow. But again, if you ignore the timer and keep working, it's called, you're going to break the conditioned response. Your brain will figure out that the timer is not actually saber-toothed kitten, will stop producing the mind-focusing adrenaline, and you'll soon be back to procrastinating again. So I cannot overemphasize the importance of stopping when the timer goes off. Right, next, reset the timer and probably have a break, e.g. 10 minutes. And when your break is over, reset the timer for another amount of time, for example, 40 minutes. And next, work on something else. Again, this is really critical because this helps create the time scarcity, which is what the mini deadlines are all about. So you may have noticed that work can expand to fill all available time, and if you don't work on different things when you come back from your break, it's not really much different from not having the mini deadlines and just working on the same thing, and you may find the time you're spending on something is going to expand, and you're spending too much time on something and running out of time to work on the other stuff. So working on something else can be a completely different thing. If you've been at the computer, it can be good to go and do something physical, or it could just be a different paragraph of an essay. But again, it helps create that time scarcity, which produces the mind focusing adrenaline and helps us bust procrastination. Quite important. And rinse and repeat. So there you have it. Before we go, I will just give you a couple of secret tips known only to behavior scientists and achievers. So just a couple of secret troubleshooting tips. One, have you ever noticed that the hardest part is getting started? So this is really very, very simple tip. Simply set your saber-tooth kitten or timer for a tiny, non-scary amount of time. It could be 10 minutes, even 5 minutes, even 2 minutes. The reason the hardest part is getting started is because you're overriding something called the extinction burst, basically where your brain figures out that your work is not actually a saber-tooth tiger. But that's kind of another story, but it doesn't take long, so just set your timer for just a tiny, non-scary amount of time to get started. And the second thing is watch the self-talk. Talk like an achiever. So procrastinators will often, rather than rewarding their progress, which is what achievers do, because behaviour that gets rewarded gets repeated, and we want to reward our efforts because we want to make it easier to keep trying, procrastinators will do the opposite. So imagine you've finally made a start on something you've been avoiding for ages, and say you're 10 minutes into it, and think about what your self-talk is at that point. And I've actually asked people a lot of that question, and most people struggle with procrastination, and most people say when they've finally made a start on something really important that they've been avoiding for ages, their self-talk when they've actually finally started is more like, I should have started sooner, I should have done more work in less time, oh my god, I still have so much to do and not enough time. So when we use punitive self-talk like that, we think we're motivating ourselves, but we're not. We're actually punishing our efforts, and if behaviour gets punished, it's less likely to happen again, and that actually makes it harder to start again and actually perpetuates procrastination. So try and turn that around and reward your progress, even the smallest amount of progress. So that's it, and that can be and rewards can be the self-talk, yay me, I finally made a start, a coffee, a chocolate, just rewards. So that is it. So I really hope you try this deceptively simple technique, because it is very powerful, and I used it to help me develop this presentation and write my latest book. And I really hope that you're going to use this simple T3 time to task strategy to procrastinate less, because the world is waiting for your work and your voice. So thank you and take care, and subscribe to my channel if you want to hear about more habit change techniques and behaviour science, and also please like and share my video if you found it useful, and that will you will be helping me help others. Thank you so much. Bye bye.